This is a 1967 MGB, and it's the last year they came out with the metal dash. But what I really like is this mechanical pump for the windshield washer. There's really nothing to go wrong with it. You just pump it and the water comes out. You just pump it and the water comes out. Well, at least there's probably something we can fix. Of course, the window washer might just be empty. Let's check the bottom under the hood. No bottle, no bracket, just that tube. So it looks like we don't need to repair the window washer. We need to put one in. So we will go to the Moss catalog and look at the diagram of the washer pump assembly and what we're fixing today. Here is the manual pump, the button that you push. Coming off the back of the pump, you have two fittings. One goes to a tube that goes to a T-connector, and from that T-connector, a tube goes to the jet assemblies. The other connector on the back of the pump goes to a tube that leads to the water reservoir. The water reservoir has a cap and it has one-way foot valve. The one-way valves are important because this pump has no directionality. When you push the plunger in, water squirts out, and when you release the plunger, water gets pulled back in. So the water just goes back and forth and has no forward motion unless you put a one-way valve in it. The one-way valve in the water reservoir only lets the water go up towards the valve, and the one-way valve pictured here, there's a one-way valve that actually should be pictured here for the sake of clarity, because that valve lets the water go away from the pump but not come back towards the pump when you release the button. Another thing worth noting is this T-connector is 3/16, 1/8, 1/8. Here's the bag that it comes in, and you'll see T-connector 3/16, 1/8, 1/8. Well, what does that mean? It means that this connector is 1/8. Correction, this connector is 3/16, and this one is 1/8. And this is actually the T-connector that was under the dash. Parts of this system were still in the car. Most of the system had been taken away. And I think it's because they didn't have any one-way valves that their system quit working, and they just threw away the water reservoir. But let's talk about this size for 1 second, which would make a difference. And sure enough, if you look at what was on the car, the fitting to the intake part of this T-connector is 3/16, and the tubing's pretty tight. You can just put it on there and it won't come off. This fitting is only 1/8 inch, but they used 3/16 inch tubing, and so when they put it on, it wasn't really very tight. And you can see that they actually put some glue on it in the hopes of making up for the fact they had the wrong size tube. And I don't know for sure, but I suspect that when they put their system together, it did not work for two reasons. One, it probably leaked here and at the fitting here with the jet assembly. And the other issue, they did not have a one-way valve. So when they squirted the water, when they pumped their manual pump, the water just went back and forth and didn't actually come out of the jet assembly. So let's put together a system here on the workbench to make sure it works before we put it into the car. First, let's look at the pump. Here's the plunger that we will see coming from the front of the dash that we press. And here are the two connectors to the tubing on the back of the pump. And we can take this bezel off, and we see that it's a simple plunger and a simple diaphragm. And you press against that diaphragm, and that pushes the water out. In the absence of a one-way valve, when you release the plunger, the water will just come straight back in. So let's put it together and then look at the tubing that connects to the jet assembly. This is the 3/16 tubing, and it goes to a one-way valve. From there, more 3/16 tubing, and it goes to the T connector. And from the T connector, it's 1/8 inch tubing that goes to each of the jet assemblies. So we're going to hook that up to one of the connectors on the back of the pump, and the other connector will go to the reservoir. This is the tubing that goes to the reservoir, and we note that when we take the lid off the reservoir, that at the bottom, this is a one-way valve. So what we're going to do is fill it up with water and test it to see if it works. So let's test it. I'm going to push the plunger and we'll see what happens. Oh, no, whoa, stop. Okay, so I've got it put together, and now it's time to put it under the dash, which is probably the least graceful moment of the entire endeavor. So you just get up under here like this. It's elegant. Oh my goodness. Okay, now gotta have a light, and then you just find that jet assembly and hook. Just push the plastic tube onto it, but that's all right. And I'm hoping that the jet assemblies that are in the car will work, so I don't have to replace them. But if I do, I'll just replace them. So I'm gonna reach through, I'm gonna find that hole and just push this through so I'll know where it goes. There we go. Okie doke. And then I'll feed this other piece of tubing coming off of the T connector over to the driver's side. Okay, you can cut that. Okay, now I'm going to try to get under the dash on this side and see if I can, there it is. I can see the little tube. Now we'll see if I can get it. Oh my goodness. So I'm pulling it over to this side, and I'm trying not to tangle it up in the wires under here. I'm kind of stuck with the brake pedal and the clutch. There's just not a very easy way to do this. Or at least there's not a graceful way to do it. Now we will put fresh tubing through this grommet, and it will come out under the dash, and from there we will run it to the pump. The jets were bad, so I had to replace them after all. I put masking tape on the hood so I wouldn't scratch the paint and clamped locking pliers to the jet. I got under the hood, removed the nut, and it worked just fine. I have a new jet in the hole and have an open-end wrench taped into position to hold it in place, and I'll get under the dash with a washer, lock washer, and nut and see if I can thread it. So I got lucky and the lock washer and nut went right onto the nozzle, and now I'm just going to tighten it up. System in place. I have filled the reservoir with the blue windshield washing liquid. Now let's see if it works. We're going to push the button and see if it works. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, look at that. Well, I'm glad that worked. Happy motoring.